prior to this, I did a little research and I saw that you're on the board of a lot of different companies. I have been on the board, a lot of interesting companies. A couple of them in particular jumped out at me because, so I live in Amsterdam, which, we get around on bicycles here. It's actually a terrible city to own a car. So I'm a heavy user of something called Green Wheels, which is basically just car sharing. When I want a car, when I want to go to Home Depot or whatever, well, the equivalent, I book a car 20 meters from my door for an hour. I bring it back. Somebody else has to take care of it and maintain it and pay for the upkeep and the parking. I love it. And I realized this is basically just cloud computing for cars,
Yeah.
And I saw that you were currently you're on the board of a company called Zagster, which does that for bicycles and e-bikes, scooters. And
Yes.
one of the on the board previously of a company called Zipcar in the US, which does a very similar thing. Do you see some parallels, or what do you see in that space?
So, so I was the chairman of the board for over 10 years of Zipcar. I was on the board of Zagster. I no longer am, but I was for a few years. And I think that the whole idea of sort of shared resources is one that is clearly here to stay. Shared resources in the physical world, whether it's an Airbnb, right, or a Zipcar or Green Wheels, or any of these sorts of of opportunities, or in the cloud world. And I think that this idea of shared resource and not actually owning the physical asset, but rather paying for use of the physical asset, is one that is very much a trend that's here to stay. And then I think that there's also within that sort of the subcategories of, are you using a resource that is owned by a company that is monetizing that resource as a business? Mm-hmm. That's what Zipcar did. We had the cars. We didn't own them. We leased them, but they were our, asset, right? That we were then putting out there for people to utilize. Or are you having people use an asset that is actually owned by somebody else, not by the company operating it, right? That's Airbnb. That's Uber. That's I'm not sure if Green Bikes is like that, or if they actually own the bikes, but those are, I think, two very distinct models in that world. In the cloud computing world, we have yet to see any real success with compute assets that are owned by random third parties all over the place. The old sort of SETI at home model of let's harness unused compute on your desktop and in an enterprise data center. That model hasn't yet really kind of taken hold in a meaningful way. The cloud model today really still is about the cloud operator having the ownership of the asset that they then monetize. Yeah. Bridge is maybe one step further towards this more decentralized model, because the servers aren't in fact ours, but they do belong to a data center partner we work with, as opposed to sort of an application owner who's then monetizing unused capacity. That feels to me like we're not quite there yet in terms of the technologies that are going to be needed for that.
Yeah, but it is one step closer. I can agree with that it's like, if I need to spin up a service in, I don't know, Uganda, if there's a data center there, but there's a lot of reasons why I'd want to use something nearby.
That's right.
I don't need to wait for Amazon to figure out to start a data center in Uganda or Philippines or wherever it is that it may be.
Right.
So,
yeah. And this is where I think there will be a drive of some of the larger companies needing these kinds of things. The car manufacturers are a great example of this, right? They're all trying to figure out cloud connectivity for their vehicles. And when you talk to the Volvos or the Toyotas of the world, it's pretty clear to them that there are going to be Volvo cars in more countries than there will be Amazon data centers for the foreseeable future.